Good to see you. Thank you for being here, and thanks for having me here. You have no idea what your singing just did for me. When you sang that song, When I Go Home, a grown man sat on a front row, and it took 2 tissues to get over that song. And I sat there and thought to myself, that was worth every mile I drove. You all fed my heart. The Holy Spirit came down, and I sensed something in that song that was different to this world. I thank you for that. I thank God for that. I thank you for the gifts you sent our church in our time of need in our town. Words can't express my gratitude. As I think about this morning's sermon, I may be preaching it to the wrong crowd, because I'm not sure you need this, but yet I'm pretty sure you do, because you're stuck in America, and it rubs off, and it tends to make you who you wouldn't want to be, and who Christ wouldn't want you to be. I don't mean to offend anyone. I just want us to put on our thinking caps and try to get into my heart of hearts and question myself as to what I am and who I am and what I could do to be better than I am, to be who I'm supposed to become in this world to His honor and to His glory. The title of this morning's message, America's Hypocrisy versus Jesus' Christianity. I'm going to start in a rather strange way. Please forgive me. I know I've been commanded to preach the Word, and I plan to get to the Word, but I want to start with the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. That's not in the King James Bible. I don't know that that's in any of the versions of the Bible. I think this is way off base as far as preaching the Word. But I'd like to bring you some wisdom that I think Mark Twain has taught me through that book. I read the book as a kid, and it was a great story of high adventure. I've reread the book in my older days when I've learned to look deeper than the superficial and find what this brilliant writer might have been telling me a long time ago, left on record for me to understand, to learn from, I hope. Twain has been accused of being a racist and anti-Christian. I don't think he is. I think he's against Christianity that's not Christianity. And I think he paints a picture of that in Huckleberry Finn like I've never seen anywhere else. The story goes like this, if you've never read the book. Huckleberry Finn's a 14-year-old boy. He's escaping an abusive and drunken father, but more than that in the book, I think he's escaping the Christianity he's stuck in his day. That's really not Christianity. And he decides to run, and he heads off down the Mississippi River with Jim, a black slave, who has learned that he's about to be sold. If things had stayed the way they were, he was content, but he can't stand the idea of going where he thinks he's going to go. And these two wanderers together come down the Mississippi River on a raft. Huck's a 14-year-old boy trying to learn what life is and how to deal with situations and what it's all about. As they come down that river, there's a passage in the book that I want to share with you. Huck's battle had come to be in his conscience. He was trying to deal with himself and the sin he was committing. He was He had become a friend with Jim. And you weren't supposed to do that, he thought. He had perhaps grown to love Jim. And you sure weren't supposed to do that. And above all, you weren't supposed to harbor a runaway slave. And he's coming down the river with Jim, and he comes to a point where he's got to make a decision, he feels like, not just about his life. Huckleberry Finn makes a decision about his own eternity in his mind. I want to tell you this, a powerful passage, one of the greatest passages I've ever read in all of literature I've read. Huck makes a conscious decision, and Huckleberry Finn chose hell over hypocrisy. I want this to set the stage for our message this morning. That here's a fictitious character, I understand that. But by the time you've been with him this long going down the river, he's become real, and he's my friend. And I relate to this 14-year-old boy, and he comes to this passage I'd like to read. People that acts as I'd been acting about this, and then it has the N-word. I refuse to say it. That's offensive to some of my brothers and sisters, and it's better to have a millstone about my neck and cast into the sea than to offend a brother or sister, but that's just my choice I'm making here. I'm not going to read exactly. People that acts as I'd been acting about this black man goes to everlasting fire. It made me shiver, and I about made up my mind to pray and see if I couldn't try to quit being the kind of boy I was and be better. So I kneeled down. But the words wouldn't come. Why wouldn't they? It weren't no use to try to hide it from him, capital H. It weren't no use to try to hide it from him, nor from me neither. I knowed very well why they wouldn't come, those words. It was because my heart weren't right. It was because I weren't square. It was because I was playing double. I was letting on to give up sin, but away inside of me, I was holding on to the biggest one of all. I was trying to make my mouth say I would do the right thing and the clean thing and be right toward this black man, towards his owner, and tell where he was. But down deep in me, I knowed it was a lie. And he knowed it too. You can't pray a lie. I found that out. So I was full of trouble, full as I could be of it. And I didn't know what to do. So I sat there thinking how near I come to being lost and going to hell. And I went on thinking and got to thinking about our trip down the river. And I see Jim before me all the time, in the day and in the nighttime, sometimes moonlight, sometimes storms. We are floating along, talking and singing and laughing. But somewhere I couldn't seem to find no places to harden me against him, but only the other kind. I was trembling because I had got to decide, forever I got to decide betwixt two things. And I knowed it. I studied a minute, sort of holding my breath. Then I says to myself, all right then, I'll go to hell. I'll go to hell. It was awful thoughts and awful words, but they was said, and let them stay said. And I never thought no more about reforming. Is there perhaps a Huckleberry Finn out there somewhere? Decades and decades later? That makes a choice, if that's what it takes to be a part of them, a church. I'll just go to hell. The passage impacted me to the point that I wept. And I still tend to cry after as many times as I've gone back and read that passage. Why would I cry? Was I really afraid Huck Finn went to hell? Well, number one, he's a fictitious character. But I get wrapped up in things, you know. My mind's kind of weird. He was real to me. But number two, I know better than that. It's not our works that God looks at. It's not the decisions we make. It's the blood of Christ. So I didn't cry because I was concerned that Huck Finn was burning in hell. And I didn't cry because I wished I could have got to him and preached him the truth and give him some peace. Wouldn't that have been nice to have found that boy, known what he was thinking, known what he was dealing with, and tell him about grace? But that wasn't really why I cried either. I cried because Christian hypocrisy had led him away from the God he needed so badly in his life. He had nowhere to turn, nobody to turn to. The God he'd heard about sure didn't seem like anything to come to. I cried because hypocrisy has always been Christianity's worst enemy. Look at who Jesus focused upon in his reprimands. It wasn't the ones that we would think would be so vile and corrupt. It was the ones who weren't real with religion. The elite religionists who drove more people away than they brought in. I cried because conversions to hypocritical Christianity lead to destruction. The words of Christ. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. You're not doing a service to these people when you bring them into your religion. You're making them worse than when you found them. We don't want to be that. I'm not accusing you of being that. Jesus made the statement about religious people in his day. I cried because of the blindness of American hypocritical Christianity. We can very easily see the speck in his eye. I have no idea, no consciousness of the beam that's in my own eye. I cried because American Christianity is as a whited sepulcher. Beautiful on the outside. Inside full of dead men's bones, a stench. That's the way Jesus describes it in Matthew. In Luke, he describes it as, woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, for you love the uppermost seats in the synagogues and the greetings in the markets. You think you're really being noticed. You think you're being seen. You think you're special. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are as graves which appear not, and the men that walk over them are not aware of them. Well, which is it, Jesus? Are we flashy sepulchres with nothing on the inside? Yeah. Or are we thinking we're really being noticed? Look at me, I'm sitting up front, I'm preaching on the radio, I'm live streaming on Facebook, and everybody's looking at me, and I'm as an unmarked grave that nobody's even looking at. That people don't even know I'm there. And I think I'm being such a servant of Christ. He gets me both ways. He's pretty good at doing that. I cried because hypocrisy has emptied our churches. Job 15:34. For the congregation of the hypocrites shall be desolate. Those are strong words, aren't they? Where have they gone? I routinely preach to a handful of people about my age. Where are the generations after me in Dawson Springs Primitive Baptist Church? Whose fault is it? Why didn't they come to us? Why don't they sit in our place? Why don't they hear what I want to tell them? Why have they made a conscious choice that if that's what it takes, I'll choose hell over that? I probe my own mind and my heart and my life and my church, but most of all me. I cried because the church of Jesus Christ, in so many ways, is no longer recognizable. By this shall all men know you're my disciples, if you have love one for another. Even to the extent that Jesus would say, here's a distinguishing factor. If you're going to live in my kingdom and do life my way, love your enemies. That'd make you different, wouldn't it? That'd make a different kind of church, wouldn't it? That'd make a place where Huck Mike could bring Jim and find welcome for both of them. They both were needing the same thing. In the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Twain was brilliant. Every preacher in the book was either a greedy, lying thief or an ignorant, mindless fool. I don't think he was against Christianity. I think he was against hypocrisy in Christianity. And he made his point with me. So I look around at our nation, at our churches, at my life, and I ask the question, well, Lord, what is real Christianity? What is real Christianity? It's more than just knowing the truths in your mind. Knowledge puffeth up. We've been there. I am there. To think we've got the truth reaches nobody. That attitude. Egotistical intellectualism is not real Christianity. To have Christ in your heart and go out and save the hungry and the poor and the needy and all, but you don't have anything in your head about who he is or what he taught, that's vulnerable emotionalism. That'll lead the silly women captive and the men too. It's more than heart. It's more than mind. It's more than walk. To walk the steps of Christ without the mind and the heart turned toward him, that's Phariseeism, hypocrisy. That's hypocritical Phariseeism. To walk the walk without the understanding and the heart. Love God with your mind, with your heart, and with your life, all your strength. That's real Christianity. How far does it go, Lord? Luke chapter 9, about verse 43. And they were all amazed at the mighty power of God and began to wonder among themselves at the things they had seen. He's just raised the lunatic boy to a right mind, put him in his father's arm, and the apostles couldn't do that one, and they're amazed at the mighty power of God, and they begin to wonder among themselves at all the things they've seen over the last few days, few weeks, few months, like the raising of the dead, the blind can see, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf can hear, the poor have the gospel preached to them. They begin to just marvel in their minds about Christ and what they're seeing, and Jesus tells them something to ponder. In Luke chapter 9, verse 44, let these sayings sink down into your ears as they're amazed beyond measure of what they've seen in this man. Let these sayings sink down between your ears. For the Son of Man shall be delivered into the hands of men. His point, you haven't seen anything yet. The best is yet to come. Or I might say the worst is yet to come. The worst action of man in all the history of the world is the greatest action of God that for all eternity. I'm going to a cross is what he told him. He tells them, let this soak into your head. Let this saying sink down into your ears. The Son of Man, me, Jesus Christ, will be delivered into the hands of men, and I'm going to a cross and die. Of all the glorious things he is, that's by far the tops. Of all the special things in history and all eternity, that's the greatest of all. I'm going to a cross. If you want to really be amazed, if you want to really ponder the wonders of me, I'm about to go to a cross here in just a few days. That's how he responds to their amazement. The next words. But they understood not this saying, and it was hid from them, that they perceived it not, and they feared to ask him of that saying. They didn't get it. I've counted multiple times where he told them about the cross, and each time they would start something new, or oftentimes it would happen just as it happened here. He'd speak to them of the cross, and they'd be overwhelmed with such a thought that sometimes they'd get in his face about it, but sometimes it went in one ear and out the other, as opposed to sinking in there and staying and rattling around a while, and the impact of it hitting them like a ton of bricks. They didn't understand. You don't have that excuse. You understand what he did. It's history now. It was a bit confusing. I can see how they couldn't figure that out. If he's really God, and he was, and they kind of knew that, I think, but how can this happen? How can it be? And so they didn't understand it, and they didn't figure out how to ask him the question. And so what did they do instead of letting that soak in and then ponder the most wonderful thing in all eternity? The next verse, there arose a reasoning among them, which of them should be the greatest. As he's encouraged them to think about the greatest thing you can think about, God hanging on a cross, they begin to have a strife among themselves, which of them is the greatest. I think they've missed the point. I think their minds have wandered. Just prior to the Lord's Supper, in Matthew's account, Jesus mentions that one will betray him. One of the group is a traitor. And it says that each one of them, they all asked Jesus the question, is it I? Each one, I think, seeing in himself the capability of such a dastardly deed, to deny you, is it I? Could it be me? They have the Lord's Supper, the first one. Do this in remembrance of me. It's a time that they're supposed to be focused on the cross that's about to happen tomorrow. It's the picture that we're left to remind us of the cross, and they've been involved personally in that first Lord's Supper. And Jesus, again, in Luke's account at this point, he mentions the traitor. And it says in Luke's account that they all began to talk among themselves. And there was a strife arose among them as to who he was talking about. Whoa. Again, we have a beautiful picture of crucifixion. And they began to argue among themselves which one it could be. And, it could be, I won't look at anybody. I don't know you much anyway. It could be you. I'll point at Marty. It could be you. No, it could be you. I've been noticing. And they're arguing, basically, that I'm better than you, and I wouldn't do it, but you might. Probably would. And this strife arises among themselves as to which of them is the greatest, when they should be focused on do this in remembrance of me. And again, not in their mind what should be in their mind, ego, personal greatness. Look at me, how bright I'm shining. Hypocrisy. High on self, higher on self than on the Lord. There's a strife arises among them who should be the greatest. And Jesus teaches them, preaches to them, in Luke's version, a sermon there. It's a short sermon. It doesn't go long. I don't think he had their attention. I think he figures that out. He talks to them about, if you want to be great in my kingdom, then you have to be the least. If you want to be great in my kingdom, it's not the older one that would demand the respect from the way this world would look. It's the younger one. It's the one that'll be the servant. That's who. And I'm leaving the kingdom with you, he says there, and I don't think you're ready for it. You've been following me for 3 years and you don't have it yet. And I think we get a little show and tell right there. And supper being ended in John's version, he took a towel and girded himself and began to wash their feet. Peter said, in Kentucky language, "This ain't right. This is not the way it's supposed to be." Jesus, in so many words, says, just be quiet and watch, Peter. You'll figure this out later. I know you don't understand right now. Peter won't shut up, as usual for Peter and me. But Jesus finally just continues on and washes all their feet, and he says to them, you've seen what I did to you. Did you see it? Did you notice? I, your Lord and Master, you call me Lord and Master, and you say, right, for so I am. If I, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. You're not better than anybody. I'm not playing on that I'm better. Jesus was not the hypocrite. He's real. He did stoop and wash their feet. He's still the same. He cooked and served breakfast after resurrection. I learned that one time. He's still the same. What's your vision of him in heaven? High and lifted up, exalted, that's my vision. But what if we get there and he's still the same? I find indications that he'll be the one that feeds us in heaven. What if that's what the real glory is being that servant? What if he truly is that from all eternity and for all eternity? And we finally get there and figure out, I see now. It's my turn, Lord. Let me cook. Let me do it. I don't know who he is. I have difficulty. Even with faith, I have difficulty seeing him and figuring him out. He's past my understanding. But he left them a show and tell. He left them the picture of the feet right there. And what was their problem in both those situations, in Luke chapter 9 and in Luke chapter 22? They're with their brothers in the church, and each one is looking at the other with a downward view. From up here, I'm looking at you because I belong up here and you're beneath me in some shape, form, or fashion. When the right view would be that I'm down here on my knees looking up at you. And that not just be a show or a put on, but that end up being the real me. That I'm not so interested in being right or winning the argument, but what I'm interested in more than anything is showing Christ to you through me and my love for you. I'm getting better in my marriage at not answering, but sometimes I still speak when I could stay quiet. And I think she's getting better at it too. We've just had 50-something years of practice. It's about time we both learned our lesson, isn't it? So whoever it is that you're closest to, but I think the picture here is a picture of brothers and sisters in the Church of Jesus Christ and our attitude one toward another, that not just those out there will know we're real, but we among ourselves will know we're real. When that love shines forth in a willingness to be humble, to be like Christ. Real Christianity among brothers and sisters in a church. Love one another. Luke chapter 9 goes on. Luke chapter 9, he brings a child to him and he teaches them the lessons of humility in that. We'll skip that part. We'll go to verse 49, Luke 9 and 49. And John answered and said, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and we forbade him because he followeth not with us. And Jesus said unto him, Forbid him not, for he that is not against us is for us. Who's that? That's the church down the street. That's the other order. That's the ones that John found a group here, and they didn't get some aspect of it right. They're not teaching this the way you taught us to teach it. They're not believing this the way we believe it. They're not holding to what we hold to and what we think you hold to. And what should we do? Just forbid them and blackball them? And sometimes we're mighty close to do that to the ones we're the closest to. The ones that we share the most in common with. And we'll take that little distinction here or there. And we don't like you anymore. That's like a grade school playground. That's not Christianity. You're not going to be my friend anymore. You see the unrealness in that? Do you think that's really? I was in the Philippines. But on the way to the Philippines this trip, we went to Taiwan. Gus Harder and Travis Housley and myself, and we thought we had an opportunity to speak to university students on a university campus, a beautiful campus. We had planned ahead. We had gotten our heads together, and we decided we would approach this thing. We're on a university campus where we're thinkers, and we're going to approach this thing with logic and reasoning, and we're going to teach them, first of all, that our book is the book. It's got to be, because all the prophecies that are right, and just prove to them beyond with reasoning and intellect that we've got the book, so our God's the God, and here we go. The best laid plans of mice and men. We spent about 2.5 days speaking to groups of students. Finally, Gus looked at one young man. We're getting pretty frustrated. We're getting nowhere. We're beating our heads against the wall. Gus looked at one young man and he said, "Why are you here?" And he said, "We're here to practice our English. We're here to practice our English." You talk about homesick. Wrong place, wrong time, Lord. This wasn't our open door. I don't know what's going on here. But maybe it was my open door. Maybe like when you sung the song a while ago and I got the blessing and thinking I was one that's supposed to dispense the blessing, and you'll not receive what I received, I don't suppose, today. The spirit I felt at that point. But maybe it was for this that I went. As we're leaving that day, I finally got to the point. I said, "Brothers, we're doing this wrong. We got to touch their hearts." And they said, "Go for it." I gave them my best version of the prodigal son, coming home to the father and blank stares. I'd struck out. I couldn't convince their minds. I couldn't touch their hearts. I got nowhere. And I'm leaving that session and walking across that campus, and at a distance, there's a young lady about the age of my daughter at that time, university age, 19, 20 years old. And she's yelling something, and I can't understand what she's saying. And I said, "What?" And she says, "Are you Christian? Are you Christian?" In a culture that's 1% Christian, where we've learned from them that they put food out at night to keep their ancestors from coming back and haunting them, and they wouldn't leave that and take Christ. But here's a voice in the distance. "Are you Christian? Are you Christian?" I said, "Yes, yes, yes. We are Christian. We are Christian," at the top of my lungs. And she starts running towards me. And I guess I took a step or two towards her, but I was a little overwhelmed with the whole situation. I wasn't sure what this attack dog was going to do. She got to me, and she grabbed me, little old girl, she grabbed me like a bear, pulled me to herself and hugged me and threw me out at arm's length, still holding on to me, and she said, "I'm Catholic. I love Jesus Christ." And I said back to her, "I'm Primitive Baptist, and I love the same Jesus Christ." And my hard shell had cracked. I know we stand for truth. We got to stand for truth. Truth is of paramount importance. But when you can be halfway around the world, discouraged, disheartened, saddened, lonely. And you find somebody that loves Jesus Christ, that doesn't look at you with a smirk or with a mock or with a head shake or an eye roll when you preach to them about the prodigal son who found love with his father and it meant nothing. And here's a girl hugging me and telling me she loves Jesus Christ. I began to look at Catholics differently, and I don't have anything against a Catholic. I didn't then, I don't think, but I probably did. Otherwise, that wouldn't have affected me such. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with Catholics, from their hierarchy, the big folks up toward the top, to the boots on the ground in the recovery at Dawson Springs. You talk about some good folks. They are precious. Lord, what should I do? Forbid them? Get in their face? Tell them how wrong they are? If I have opportunity, I'll throw out a little grace here and there. I don't think that's wrong. I think if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be real. But I don't think I'm a real Christian. If I can't find some extent of comfort in somebody that embraces me, that loves the same Jesus as I love, that we'll spend eternity together, if I can't extend an arm of love to those people, I'm not Christian. I'm not Christian. I'm not real. I'm a hypocrite. I think Jesus covered the other Christians out there who aren't us. And if, here's where I had to take another step. If I could be halfway around the world and rejoice so in loving a Catholic, can I not come back to America and love a primitive Baptist who has a bit of a difference with me about a scripture or two here or there? What should I do, Lord? Forbid him? One of my worst experiences, I'd been to a huge primitive Baptist meeting, and preacher after preacher rose and with innuendo and slander spoke of people among our people who had been faithful to the cause for years and years because a difference had developed. Nobody amened anything that was said about Jesus Christ that I could recollect as I was coming home and weeping in my vehicle driving home. Jesus Christ didn't get any amens, but the innuendos got amens. Folks, that's not real Christianity. That's not real Christianity. Don't let the world rob you of Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, and his ways. Don't follow the crowd. By nature, we're all hypocrites. By nature, we all look down on everybody, except for me. Except for me and thee, and sometimes I wonder about thee, Lord. Can we not have that attitude? Do we not have that attitude sometimes? So be careful with your neighbors, those in other churches, and find the common ground and reach out to them with love. The chapter in Luke doesn't end. Chapter 9. Verse 51. I think it's the next verse after we stopped. It came to pass, when the time was come that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. This is history's moment. The day's about here. The hour's nearly at hand. He's headed to Jerusalem, but he passes through Samaria. And they sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. And they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elias did? He turned and rebuked them and said, Ye know not what manner of spirit you are of. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy lives, but to save them. And they went to another village. We started out with brothers in a church who would strive among themselves over who was the greatest, each one hypocritically looking at his brother, thinking, I'm better than you. We progress in the teachings here to other Christians. Other Christians, yeah, they're not as bad as you think they might be. Forbid them not. If he's not against us, he's for us. If he lifts up my name, I'm with him. You need to be with him, says Jesus. But now we come to that other group, the enemies of Jesus Christ, the ones who would throw him out and say, good riddance. We don't need his kind. We don't need anybody like him around here. The enemies of Christ, the enemies of Christianity, the enemies of the church. They're here. They're around. Times haven't changed that much. John and James had a bright idea. God's on our side. God has all power. Let's see it, Lord. It's time. Let's pray to the Father. He's your Father, Jesus, and you've said he's our Father, so let's talk to him. It's a high time. Let's talk to him and get some fire to come down from heaven and consume these criminals. Let's turn them into toast. Watch them fry and smile while they're frying. Smell like country ham. I'm going a little too far there, aren't I? Anyway, I've got too much of James and John in me, don't I? They deserve it, Lord. They deserve it. Listen to how they treated you. They're your enemies. What did Jesus say to them? Same thing he says to me when I think that way. You have forgotten what spirit you are of. Try the spirits. Listen to who's talking to you. If one's talking to you, if a spirit's speaking to you, if your insides themselves are talking to you, or if it's Satan on your shoulder, if he's telling you to consume the enemies, that we got to get rid of them, that the world will be better off, and Christ would be better off without them. You know what Christ says? Vengeance is mine. I can take care of them. It's not your job. It's not even your job to think these thoughts. You forget what your spirit you are of. You're not being who you are. You're not real. You're a put-on Christian, pretending to have love, and you have none. And Jesus just turned and walked the other way, went to another village. It's okay to do that. That's the right thing to do, I think. Don't lose your spirit. The Spirit of Christ within you. I'm not talking about losing your eternal life and the Spirit taking off and flying away and you going to hell. I know we started out with that kind of thought, but that's really not what this sermon is about, is the fear of going to hell. The sermon is about the Spirit, the Holy Spirit within me, leading me to be like Christ, to shine that light in this world. And how can you better shine a light than being the peacemaker in the church, or being the one who would extend to somebody that teaches different or thinks different or believes different. But here's the biggie right here. Here's the quantum leap. If we can love our enemies, pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. Carry their pack for them. Wow. Hard sayings, Lord. Those are hard sayings. We go back to Luke chapter 22. It's about time. He's telling them things are going to be different from here on. When I sent you out the first time, I told you not to take your lunch box, and I told you not to take your wallet, and I told you that the people would take care of you, and just to go to a house, and if somebody didn't receive you, just go next door. They would, and you'd be taken care of. Were you? Were you taken care of when I sent you? And they said, yes, Lord. He said, this time you better take your script, and you better take your purse, and you're going to have to fend for yourself, and they're not going to like you as much anymore as they used to, and you may have to work a couple of jobs, like make tents and preach at the same time, and don't depend on the people to take care of you, because you're going to find a world out there that doesn't agree with my teachings when you go out there. And then, just out of the clear blue, he says you're going to have to take your billfold, and you're going to have to take your lunchbox. And he said, by the way, how about a sword? I like that. That's what I need, is a sword. And somebody looks over in the corner, and there just happens to be two swords leaning over there in the corner. Who in the world left their swords there in that upper room? I don't know. Kind of weird, isn't it? But what's weirder than that, there's those apostles, 11 or 12 of them, depending on whether Judas is gone yet, and their captain, Jesus, and they find two in the corner, and they say, well, hey, here's two. And Jesus says, it is enough. That's not enough, Lord. You need to do it like you did with the fish. You need to multiply the sword so we all have one. No, two's just exactly what I need. He had given them the lesson of the feet. Here he gives them the lesson of the ear. And two is exactly what he needed for that lesson. The mob, the army comes. One question comes up. We're not told who asked the question, but I think it's the other man with the sword. He said, Lord, is it time to use the sword? And before Jesus can answer the question, who's got one of the swords? Who would you expect to have one of those swords? The bravest one of the bunch. He's courageous. He's daring. He's willing to die. He's told Jesus, I'll die with you. And to attack that army when there's two swords and you're the one of the ones got them, and he takes a vicious cut. And I think old Malchus, Peter wasn't that good a swordsman. He wasn't just trying to teach him a lesson and cut off his ear. He's going for his throat. But Malchus is quick. And Malchus goes this way, and Peter goes that way, and the ear goes just about like my hearing aid did nearly right there. I've been accused of being a showman. I'm sorry. And there it is laying on the ground. You see it? Look at it. It's ugly. Never seen such a thing myself. I don't want to see it. Jesus reaches over and picks up that ear. That is being a showman, isn't it? Did you see that? Did you see it? Did you see it? They saw it. That's the enemy. That's the enemy. And Peter had forgotten what spirit he was of. And two swords was just right for the lesson of the ear. We weren't going to fight our way out of this. Put your sword in your sheath. He that lives by the sword will die by the sword. If my kingdom were about that, my men would rise up and fight. You know what his men do? They walk away. They love their enemies. That's a mark, isn't it? Is that American culture? Is that Facebook? Where we seem to, in that realm of communication, have all rights to say it. It's cowardly. It's vicious. It's not Christianity. It's America. It's hypocrisy. When I can slam you and then push the button and make you not my friend anymore. My goodness. Love your enemies. It's a mark of Christianity. It's the best opportunity we have to paint Christ to a world that doesn't know him. We're talking about how to deal with our brothers and sisters. We're talking about how to deal with other Christians. We're talking about how to deal with non-Christians who hate Jesus Christ. It ain't easy, but it is Christ. His part wasn't easy either, was it? But he followed through on it, and he gave us the greatest example. After the feet and the ear, there's the cross. Let this saying sink down in your ears. I went to a cross, and all I'm doing is asking you to be real in your love for me. We've talked about Huck Finn. We spent a little time in the Scriptures. Let's close with To Kill a Mockingbird. I've given you probably my favorite, well, at least today I'll read another book or be reminded of a book, and tomorrow I'll have another favorite passage. But literature is awesome when you come to look for it. Look for the truths in it and the teachings in it. And the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, there's a scene in that movie big old Gregory Peck, Atticus Finch, a monster of a man. And Jim, his son, early teenage years, probably 13 years old, maybe 14, about Huck's age. And they go to this vile weasel of a man's house in the dark of the night and pull up in his front yard, Bob Ewell. He's a vicious, vile man. And Atticus Finch, in his efforts to try to do what he thinks is right and what was right in the book, he gets out of his vehicle, and Bob Ewell comes toward him in that yard. Old rundown house. This was a vile, wicked man. And they're standing and talking face to face in front of this vehicle, and it's as if Jim, his son, has his nose pressed to the glass, watching. Somebody's watching, folks. Somebody's watching you to see how you react to enemies. Out of the clear blue, Bob Ewell, from way down deep in his lungs, he goes, spit right in his face. Little weasel, shrimpy guy, and Atticus Finch, the daddy. You know what I'm sitting there thinking? Kill him. Hit him. Beat him. He reaches in his pocket and gets out his handkerchief and wipes his face and turns and walks back and gets in the car. You know the best part of the story? Jim was watching. Jim saw his dad and what his dad did in that moment. You think he ever forgot that? I know it's fictitious again. I get too wrapped up in these things, but it was real to me. It was real to me. To paint that picture of Christ and turn and walk away from the fight, whether it's the enemy or your family or your church or other Christians, real Christianity gets rid of the hypocrisy. Real Christianity loves at whatever level, home, family, church, other Christians, and the unlovable enemies. May we walk the walk, love with our hearts, not lose the love in our minds. The truth is precious. But I think where I miss the boat sometimes is in the heart and with the love. By this shall I bring honor to Jesus Christ. By this shall all men know I'm his disciple, if I extend that love to everybody, always. What a challenge. Can't meet the mark, haven't met the mark, won't meet the mark, but that's no excuse. The mark is there. And the man is worth listening to, that I might do it for him with what he's done for me. God bless you.